pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Let the record reflect all council members are present tonight, and we'll begin with the prior meeting minutes. May 22nd.
Make a motion to accept May 22nd meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And the RDC meeting minutes. Motion to approve them as written.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And we will move on to reports, starting with Andy.
Alright, under water. The water plant has treated 1,007,327 gallons since May 22nd. Our average daily usage has been 47,967. The filters were backwashed on May 23rd, 25th, 29th, 31st, and June 2nd, 5th, 7th, and 12th. Our June back T test is complete and is absent. The June water report is complete and has been submitted. The bypass filter for the water plant will be delivered this Thursday. Peerless Midwest will be here Friday to start the connection, and we will install the media next week, get them tested, and once they're tested, we'll make the final connections and begin the tank repair work. Under wastewater, we've been performing daily checks at the lift station and the sewer plant. The lift station's pumped 1,164,136 gallons since May 22nd, and our average daily usage has been 55,435. Sewer samples are being collected weekly. The wastewater plant is closed and we're not discharging. And then I need the council to decide on the Silversmith data so that we can finish our sewer project and close out that grant. We have been working on cleaning and clearing brush the sewer plant. We rebuilt the controls for the iron filter at the sewer plant, repaired one water leak. And then we received an early ban notice from IDEM. Now they're telling us we have to be below 90% to get off. And we just don't have enough data. We should be there, but I don't know. And I told them, we did $3 million worth of work. So they said, well, that's the only thing we got left is coming from laterals. And I said, well, then make everyone replace their laterals. That's the new move they're going to. So what I want to do is have our wastewater plant re-rated. I can demonstrate through our records that the capacity is underrated, and I think the plant. I really think that we should be somewhere in the 250,000 range. But it's going to take our engineers to get our plant re-rated. And last time I talked to them about that, I've talked to our previous engineer and our current engineer, but the number that's coming around is like $20,000 to $25,000. So, I think it's a worthwhile venture to get them off of our back, and so that we don't get into a situation that we got somebody that wants to build something, because they can't ban us from connecting anything new. But, basically we're down to laterals. Everything's done. So I'll I haven't printed that letter out. I'll print it out and stick it in all your mailboxes. I've gotta give a written response to that letter. And one department didn't know what the other one's doing. I mean, they didn't know we had done anything. And you'll note in the letter, it says the last 3 years that we bypassed 6 times, we've not. It was twice. And I did call and get that corrected with her. The person that did the report, I don't know, misread something, but our inspector looked it up and corrected it. So,
You get our engineer to come walk us through that process.
yeah, I mean, if I can, I'll have them come to the next meeting if they're available. If someone's available, at least talk to you about it and explain to you what they would have to do. So. The Inner Streets, the sewer lateral has been repaired at the shelter house, and we're waiting on the parking lot repairs to be completed with those 2 street cut repairs. Under building, I've issued 2 building permits, I've done 6 building inspections, 1 electrical inspection, had 4 building permitting inquiries, 3 zoning inquiries, and the June census report's complete and it's been submitted. That's all I've got unless you have any questions.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer, do you have anything?
The only thing I have is, we did receive a opioid check, another check for $476, so. The mural is still not quite done. She will be back one more time to finish it. Everything's looking really well. The cameras, 7 cameras are installed and working. 4 are left to do. And I just forwarded you guys an email from Scott. And he's explaining about how you guys can sign up to get this on your phone to look at the cameras. And then also there is internet at the shelter house right now. So.
I told him this the other day, I don't know if you told him, we can only view 4 of the 7 cameras.
Say that again, Andy, I'm sorry.
We can only view 4 of the 7 cameras.
Oh, really? Okay. I talked to him on Friday. He came in and was doing some work, so.
Yeah. Yeah, it's still 4.
It's still 4.
Yeah, I've got it on my
Okay.
phone.
I can let him know on that. I won't be here next meeting. We'll be at a conference, and that's all I have.
Any other questions for Jennifer? All right.
For code enforcement, I've issued 13 more code and ordinance violations since the last meeting. Things like limitation on keeping certain animals, some habitual barking, a few dogs running at large, and then accumulation of rubbish, and then a big one is a prohibited conduct code and ordinance violation. 3 of those code and ordinance violation notices consist of $75 in fines. For the prohibited conduct and the limitation on keeping certain animals. One of the violations has been paid. I issued 1 more golf cart permit, so that makes a total of 8 golf cart permits that are active right now. And I started the ball rolling on chicken permits. 2 or 3 people have filled out permit applications, and I should have more about that next meeting.
Thank you.
I will say that 2 people came in and complimented Luke on how he handled things. So.
From where I'm sitting, doing a pretty good job, so I appreciate the effort.
Yeah.
We're sitting doing a good job.
Yeah, I'm sorry to hear about y'all's situation. It's pretty sad. Okay. Greg, what do you got?
Alright, two matters. First, we have the kind of two outstanding issues with the county commissioners, the foreclosure and the transfer of that roadway. At the meeting, John attended. They instructed the county attorney, or I guess their city attorney, to contact John. We've reached out a few times, nothing back. So I think at this point we're gonna send a few letters, make a record he's not getting back to us, and then go back to the commissioners directly and make that known. Second item, the condemnation of the library building. Our advice at this point, since it's strategic and there's active litigation, we probably suggest at this point to circulate some times for an executive session.
I don't know if you all have seen, I spoke with Alex the other day, and then I went out of town, and was busy, didn't get a chance to call y'all, but there is a official response here.
It's in your packet. Oh.
So, take some time to review that, but I do think that we should meet regarding this. And, I guess we'll go right into as well. Mr. Dawlings, is that you?
That's real close. Selassie.
Okay.
Hey everybody, thanks for asking me to come up, Jennifer. Glad to be able to speak to you guys a little bit about our organization and hopefully how we can assist you. I understand the town has an interest in the future of the library, and I can just talk a little bit about our organization and projects similar we've worked on in other places, and maybe how we can assist in the future. So I'm guessing the majority of you probably have never heard of Indiana Landmarks before, so I'm going to do a quick thumbnail on who we are. We were founded in 1960 by Eli Lilly. You've probably heard of him. And the man, not the company. And he got together a group of leading business people in Indianapolis at that time to begin an organization that would focus on preserving Indiana's heritage through the built environment primarily. So we grew from an all-volunteer board to today we have a board of 37, about 7,000 members statewide. And because Mr. Lilly started out, at his death, he left us $3 million. His other people have in the years since contributed funds, and we have an endowment of about $83 million today. So we're able to use just some of the interest off that principal, and that funds our budget along with fundraising that we do over the course of a year. We're, as a matter of fact, just wrapping up a $35 million capital campaign, of which that money, some of that is to be invested in real estate in communities around Indiana that needs acquisition, rehab, and resale. I've explained on the phone when Jennifer and I talked that anytime Indiana Landmarks invests in a property, be it acquisition, where we come into the chain of title, or if we lend money from our revolving fund, then we place what are called protective covenants on the deed. That ensures the building cannot be demolished in the future, and that any changes that are going to occur to the exterior of the structure, in other words, what the public can see, we have design review over those. So if a property owner 10 years from then says we have to tuck point the brick on the building, they bring to us a proposal that they're going to do this work. We will review a bid package that's put together by a contractor just to make sure that the work that's being done is appropriate. I mean, just to get into the weeds for a second, if you tuck point a historic brick building or stone building with Portland cement, that is going to cause long-term damage to the brick on a historic building, because the cement is harder than the brick, and an expansion and contraction in our winters, it's going to cause spalling, and the brick face is going to come off the structure. It doesn't happen overnight, but it will happen. So that's the kind of advice that we can then tell folks about as a part of this regulatory process that's involved with our protection that we place on the property. I shared with Jennifer that we have about I think a $5 or $6 million revolving fund that we can make loans out of to nonprofits or municipalities, since you're technically I think a nonprofit. So if you would be interested in pursuing the acquisition of the building through the borrowing of funds, we can make those funds available to the town. So I believe I sent you an application, right? Yeah, so there's an application in your hands. You can fill out, submit to me. There is a process that I have to take it through internally. We have a real estate review committee, our board of directors, all that kind of have a fiduciary responsibility just like you do, but we take that through their process. If it's approved, then we can close the loan with you, and then you can use the funds for what it was requested for. I did bring for you all, and I'm gonna start this over here. Hopefully there's enough to go around. And I'm gonna start these. Pass it around. So what I'm handing out first off is there's like a summary of the programs at Indiana Landmarks going around this way from Jennifer and from this gentleman. You have one on the National Register going around, and I'll quick talk about both of those. To wrap up on the one about our loan program, we also have a grant program called our Endangered Places program, and that money for a group that is not an affiliate organization of ours, which is kind of a closer relationship that we can have with a nonprofit. You can apply for up to a $4,000 grant from us for those what I call soft costs or planning or pre-development dollars. So let's say you need to hire an architect to come in and say, what's it going to cost to adapt the old library into town hall so that it functions for you going forward? You can apply for one of those grants that we can make available to the town of Atlanta for that analysis. Now, I can probably guess that that type of work is going to cost more than $4,000. So, this is a fund to augment what ultimately you all will pay in pre-development costs, but at least it helps offset your overall expense. Then I wanted to talk a little bit about some of let me also jump back to our loan program. So on the sheet, it talks a little bit about the terms. So it is a 3-year loan. You can request funding up to $100,000, and we have gone above that before in certain instances if there's a pressing need or that's what's going to achieve the goals. So don't be too hung up about that, but that's generally the limitation. Within that 3-year time period, there is a repayment schedule that we stagger in terms of, for a non-affiliated group, a standard nonprofit, the first 6 months, it's at 0% interest. So if you pay it back within 6 months, you're not even paying any interest on the money. From months 7 through 18, we do charge 4% interest to kind of encourage the borrower to pay it back sooner, and then it steps up to Wall Street Journal Prime at the 19th month. And since it's a 3-year loan, that would then be through month 36, at which time the loan would come due. So groups that borrow from us do their repayment in different ways. Some pay it along the way, maybe every 6 months they make a payment. Some just balloon it at the end, where we're paying back what we owe plus interest, and then we're done. So that's kind of how the loan program works. Before I move on to talking about some other outside funding, do you guys have any questions for me about that program? Oh, I don't think I do. Okay. So I just wanted to talk briefly.
Excuse me, I
Oh,
do have one.
Yep.
What about timing? I know we did talk about timing as far as getting the application in and stuff, and
Right. So our next real estate committee meeting is on July 12th. And I think our next board meeting is in August, like mid-August. So we would need to go through those 2 steps. If it became something, because we have faced these situations before, that it was like oh my gosh, they're gonna do something to the building and we're gonna lose it or whatever, we can do an e-poll with our board, just digitally by email. So we could certainly do it sooner than the August date if we had to, but I think we would like to at least go through the step of presenting to our real estate committee. So, so then outside, I wanted to talk about a few other things that you all might look at outside of Indiana Landmarks' programs. If a building is listed in the National Register of Historic Places, which is the other handout that I gave you, then you are going to unlock some other potential funding that you might not otherwise be open or might not be available to you. So the National Register of Historic Places, I'm going to do also a real quick thumbnail on that. That is a program that was created by Congress. It was set up with what's called the National Historic Preservation Act of 1966. And that is what set up the framework for the historic preservation movement in the United States, was the passage of that act. There were a number of things that were created within that bill, but one of the things was to create the National Register. What are those most important buildings and historic areas of communities across the country that are deserving of our efforts at preservation and funding and et cetera? So how do we prioritize kind of those finest structures in our country's history and architecture? And so that's what that list is for. It's maintained by the National Park Service of the U.S. Department of the Interior. So if you've gone to a national park before somewhere in the United States, it's very likely that many of the structures within our national park system are on that list that are cultural resources. There is a rating system. What Congress required under that National Historic Preservation Act was that every state had to survey every historic structure within its boundaries. So Indiana has completed that. They started back in the 1970s. They made grants to my organization. We hired the surveyors. They did the survey work. We then published books of each county that indicates which buildings are the most significant and worthy of preservation. So Atlanta would be included within the Hamilton County interim report, the survey of those resources. Without a doubt, I think I can stand here and say, I didn't look it up before I came up here, but the library is an outstanding rated resource. So there is a rating system for those resources. There are 4 ratings. the highest that you can achieve is an outstanding rated building, and that's what the library is. And what that means is that it is individually eligible for the National Register of Historic Places, which is why I brought the document that I wanted you all to have, is because it's going to summarize what it is that you all may want to pursue if and when you get control of the library. And so there is a process to getting a building on the National Register. There's what's called a nomination form. It goes through a description of the building's history and the physical description of the building, from the exterior to the interior, what it's made of, what the, whether it's a school or a railroad depot or a skyscraper in a downtown, what the physical attributes of that structure are. So that's kind of what makes up a nomination. It goes into the state, they review it, and it goes before a board appointed by the governor. If it's approved there, it's forwarded on to DC, to the National Park Service, and if it passes there, then it's listed in the National Register. What does that mean besides the fact that we just got it listed? Does it suddenly mean that you as the town can't make changes to the building that you might want to make, or what kind of restrictions? And the answer to that is no. There's no limitations on property rights because the building or an area is listed in the National Register. There are tools that town governments or city governments can implement that do that do regulate changes to historic properties in a community. Indianapolis, for example, has something called the Indianapolis Historic Preservation Commission. It protects 17 historic areas of the city, as well as a number of individual properties. But that's not what we're talking about. Indianapolis also has 55 historic districts that are on the National Register of Historic Places. So they're two different things. So this is simply that you're recognizing that that building or an area of your community is important as part of your community's history and its architecture, if it's an important structure. So again, that does not mean anybody's going to come in here and tell you what you can or can't do, or that you can't replace windows or put on what kind of roof, or etc. It's just a nice recognition. Now, what it does do is it could unlock some funding for the town to be able to pursue to do work to the building. So if you took it on, for example, that building has an incredible clay tile roof, which is beautiful, and it's what we call a character-defining feature of the architecture of the building.
Mm-hmm.
But don't fool yourself, it's not cheap.
It was replaced 2 years ago.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, well, maybe that's a good thing.
I think it was about 2 years ago.
But yeah, because they can be expensive to replace. I mean, I could easily see, something of that building size being $250,000, if not
That's
more.
how much it was.
Yeah. So okay, good guess. But my point is that having that additional funding available to the town to be able to pursue is really something I think you would want to avail yourselves of. So let me talk about one program. It's called the Historic Preservation Fund. It is a federal grant program. It is not from our tax dollars. Let's be clear with that. It comes from offshore oil leases. So the federal government leases areas offshore of the United States, and oil companies pay the U.S. government money to take advantage of those leases, and then the federal government uses some of that money to distribute to the states to use for historic preservation projects across the country. So Indiana gets about $1 million of that a year is our share, and then they distribute that money in grants each year. There's an application due each year to the Indiana Department of Natural Resources, has a division of historic preservation and archaeology. I know that's a big mouthful there, which we just say DHPA. So that Historic Preservation Agency accepts the grant applications each October, and then each January they make recommendations to that board I mentioned that the governor appoints for approval of grants to nonprofit entities across the state, including municipalities that can apply for those. And by the way, churches can apply for that money too, just to be sure that you're aware of that. And so those grants are up to $50,000. They are matching grants, so you have to come up with $50,000 if you're asking for $50,000. But one thing I promote and talk about the HPF program, and the reason I do is that given our large state and 6.5 million people in it, and all the structures that we occupy, you would think that there would be lots of applications to the fund I just described. Each year there's around like 15 to 18. That's it. And so they give all the money out every year. The money is sitting there for the taking. So why not put yourself in a position where you can pursue a grant if you should ever need future work to a structure that you own that you need to maintain and upkeep? Why leave money on the table? So that's why I tell you about that. One of the entities that, moving on, that I mentioned to Jennifer that I have not explored more deeply, but I think is something you'd be eligible for unless you found differently in the time since we talked. But I think talking to the USDA, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, they invest and there's an Indiana office for it. As a matter of fact, I think there are field offices all around the state. So I think the Muncie office covers Hamilton County. But they invest only in Indiana communities in populations of 20,000 or less. And I am aware from the past of a community, I know in Huntington County, and I couldn't remember which town, but where they, the town purchased a Carnegie Library that they redid for their town hall, and they got funding from the USDA to do the work to adapt it into their town hall.
Where was that?
I couldn't remember. The only reason I remember the project at all was because we gave one of our grants, like I talked about earlier, for the town to do the planning for the project. I just can't remember. It's been like 15 years ago,
Okay.
and I just can't remember. I do remember though it was in Huntington County, and it was a small town, but I'd certainly be happy to work with you all to get connected to the USDA and have them come talk to you about what their programs are. I think they have something, it's called maybe like a municipal, any community that's wanting to do a municipal services type of building, that it's something that they will invest in. So make a grant for us. So we'll just have to talk to them to get more detail. I don't know if you've had the opportunity to talk about this in the same light as what I'm here to talk about with OCRA, the Office of Community and Rural Affairs, and or if you have a relationship with OCRA's rep for this area.
They just funded our sewer project that we just did.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So are you tied up with them until that's complete?
It might be eligible for other, not
Yeah,
yet
it was a
kind work.
wastewater, so
Yeah,
we're still
so-
eligible for.
Okay. Yeah, usually I think communities have like 2 openings or something.
You can
for-
do 2 at a time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that might be something to talk to them about and say, is this a project, the type of project that we would be eligible to apply to OCRA for? And stress that it is a historic property, and historic preservation is one of the activities that they fund with community development block grant funding. So particularly, in big cities, they get their money directly, from the feds. It doesn't have to go through the state, and then you have to compete for it, in a competitive fashion. But they get it directly, and then can dole it out for the projects that they want to. But it's small communities like yourself where a bit more of a disadvantage in having to compete for those funds, but I would definitely talk to the Okra folks and see what they could do. Unfortunately, there used to be a program until just this legislative session that I could tell communities about called the Historic Renovation Grant Program, which was intended for historic properties. The state used to have a historic tax credit through the state of Indiana that covered their 20% of the cost of the rehab of the historic property. Well, about 7, 8 years ago, they did away with that. But our organization put pressure on the legislature, and they replaced it with this Historic Renovation Grant Program, which is where you could apply for a grant of up to $100,000 for a project. And these were primarily oriented initially for for-profit businesses to renovate their building to assist revitalizing a downtown area. So if one of these buildings right over here, somebody wanted to put a business in it, maybe it was vacant and or they have a business in it and they want to expand or revitalize, you could apply for the HRGP. Guess what? In all their wisdom in this budget cycle, the legislature did away with HRGP. So we don't even have that to talk up in communities anymore after a successful 8 years of having that program to talk about in local communities around the state. And there were lots of small towns. I would say 90% of that went to money, or that money went to communities that are certainly under 100,000. So, if you have the opportunity to talk to your state legislator, tell them that the Historic Renovation Grant Program could benefit Atlanta, and you'd like to see them bring that back in the next budget cycle because it could be helpful. So yeah, I don't know if you guys have any questions for me based upon what you've heard, or if I've thrown too much information at you, but and maybe there's a next steps question is what is your all's next steps in terms of, it sounds like you have this eminent domain case that's out there.
Yeah, we need to meet regarding that, but it's definitely something that we're hoping to continue to pursue, and it's nice to know that there are a lot of potential funding options. I appreciate you coming up here and presenting this.
Of course.
Your loan program, I do believe that we'd be definitely interested in as well, so we'll get working on that application and try and get that over to you shortly. But
Excellent.
yeah, I think you all are doing good work, and I appreciate your willingness to possibly participate in something we're trying to do. So.
Yeah, great. Well, I didn't say this, but it was probably about 15 plus years ago, we made a grant to the Atlanta Library because they were starting to look at their roof and wanted to do an analysis of that and some other stuff. So we have made a grant to them. So we even have a history with this building and want to see it preserved. And I think you all are presenting an opportunity for an outstanding reuse for the building. I mean, I know of other towns around Indiana that have their town halls in Carnegie Library, so you certainly wouldn't be the only one.
Yeah, I'd love a list of those.
so,
I'd love to see
yeah.
them.
Yeah, I'd love to see
Yeah,
that.
we can get you some names of others
Yeah.
that have that. And so it's not like you're sticking your necks out as the first one, to do this. So you're doing good work, and we're glad to help in any way we can. So
Yeah, being able to preserve that building as a public space is
Yeah.
a big goal here. So
yeah, excellent. All right, well, if there aren't any other questions, I'll get out of your hair then. So,
Thank you.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
very much.
Appreciate it.
Sure.
okay, we wanna try to schedule a meeting to, discuss our next steps here. What's y'all's
Let's
availability?
see. Best move might be, you wanna circulate something tomorrow by email? I can look, it's probably Alex, you wanna do that?
Okay, I can tell you for this week, well, if we're deciding tomorrow, it wouldn't be till Friday anyway, right? At best,
Okay,
and that's my availability as well.
so maybe like sometimes next week.
But we could definitely do the first half of next week as well, it looks like in my schedule, so.
Me too.
What would that be advertised under as far as the
Would be executive session, litigation.
litigation? Okay.
Okay, we'll try to nail something down tomorrow.
Alright, sounds good.
Alright, thank you. Anything else for Craig? Alright, next item of old business codification, we've got, email here from American Legal Publishing about our codification for, our most current batch of ordinances. And, it's a pretty wide estimate range, but it's still relatively small. 1,600 to 2,250. Is that, so that's his
That's
total
the-
estimate?
Yeah, that's
So that
for,
includes updating the
Yes,
electronic
mhm,
and our
yeah.
packets for the books.
right.
So, need a motion to approve this? I think we need to stay as current as we can.
I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright,
Okay, I will let him know.
alright. On the new business, we've got some pay applications here. Certificate of substantial completion for ART, Advanced Rehabilitation Technology, for their manhole lining.
100%.
So this is not a pay application, this would be their certificate of completion.
And then close the grant, they're 100%.
We verified that, so do we have a motion to approve their certificate of completion here?
I'll move to approve their certificate of substantial completion.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Want me to sign this one?
I'll have you sign this.
Okay.
Sorry, that's just.
There's that. I'm using
Yeah, 61,000 to change.
guess we should have done this first. So
It's separate.
we did one at our last meeting.
That's a corrected one
Okay,
because it was a mistake because he didn't include retainage and since they're done,
right, okay.
it's doing it all in
Makes
one
sense.
pay app.
Alright. Motion to approve, let's see, is there a number on here? Division 2, collection system lining, yeah, there's not a,
We should have our somewhere, so it's like 61,000 and some.
oh yeah, there it is, $61,225.50.
I make a motion to approve it.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
This one now,
Yeah, that one.
the third one?
Yeah.
Next we've got Climate Feeder Consulting Group, Grant Administration, Labor Standards, and Grant Administration again, for phase 3. Total of $18,500.
I'll move we approve Klein Peters invoice 830 for 18,500.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next we have Thurber Brock for financial services for a project, $12,000.
For the yes, that management plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's what it's for.
Yeah. It is.
Need a motion for Thurber.
Yes, ma'am.
I need a motion to pay Thurber, Brock and Associates $12,000.
One second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright. Alright, we've got one from Triad. Now, Triad are not complete, with their work. They still owe us some as-built plans. So the question is, do we table this till a future meeting, or do we approve with contingency that, they're, actually completing their work? I personally would be doubtful that they'd be done between now and our next meeting. But there is the question of an extension on our project, which we can get. But I think, isn't that part of the deal?
No, what I talked to Mike about was him shifting, I mean, on your approval, shift our funds we're paying for and we pay for them, we pay for that out of local funds when it's completed. That way you can still close the grant.
And he doesn't need anything from them to close out the grant, than being the engineer of record. Okay. So he could still move forward with closing out the project
I
without.
think that's what he's, I mean, it's not like it happens in a day, it's a
Sure.
process, so he just wants to get it rolling. But having our final pay apps signed as part of it, and that's what I talked to him about earlier today.
So we're good to table this if we would like to. Okay.
Yeah, he said you can.
I personally don't feel comfortable, paying something until the work's complete.
Right, because what's our recourse if they don't ever get it to us?
Right.
Legal action, I suppose.
And no.
Okay, do we have a motion to
I
table?
motion to table it.
I'll second.
All in favor for tabling Triad's interests?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Alright, thank you. Okay, we have a sewer adjust in the amount of $122.12 for a leak under a house. Yes.
We got
You
two.
verified that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, just a
Repair is
copy.
eligible for
I
adjust.
think someone's got mine. I
Oh,
must have.
that must be you. You can
It's
have,
verified.
I'll move to approve.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Alright. Okay, any other, Jennifer, do you have one of those?
You can sign that one if you don't mind. Pass it on down. This was the final spreadsheet from Mike. So with all of our grant monies and all, so he said that was the final. So yeah.
So this one here.
Anything else from the council?
Heard anything about the ball fields or the contract or anything?
Haven't heard anything else since I talked to Mr. Miller a few weeks ago. No change. But I'll call him again, see if he's heard anything.
I almost hate to mention it.
He didn't seem too hopeful,
No.
but he had mentioned that him and some of the other parents had maybe discussed trying to put some money together.
That
See
would
if
be,
they could,
that
buy
would be great.
so, yeah, I'd be thrilled with that, but I'll call him and see if he's made any progress on that. So, okay, anything else? Alright, public questions, comments? Yes,
I have
ma'am.
a question.
Yeah.
Somebody brought to my attention that they said if this dog was to have another incident, that the town could be held liable because they're aware of what happened with this dog.
I'm not aware of how any of that stuff works. I know we have just what's in our ordinance, but usually things involving actual bites are kind of with animal control.
I know from my knowledge, I have not seen that in the ordinance book.
Yeah, there was an incident that happened in Noblesville, but it involved a groomer and a dog being killed. And, cause they had asked if the dog had been put down. I said no, and they brought up, they said the town could be held liable if this dog had another incident.
Yeah,
Because of everybody being aware of what happened.
I'm not sure. I guess that's something that, I mean, we could have you guys look into a little bit, maybe.
Yeah, if the
Make
council's
sure.
concerned.
I don't know that we could issue an order to destroy. I mean, we're not animal control.
Right.
But that's something, I mean, we'll look into it just to make sure that we're not, you know, our bases are covered. And I know you have probably ongoing concerns given what happened, and so we'll definitely do what we can to try to stay on top of that situation. But
Does this dog pose a threat to others? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
could the same thing happen
Yes,
to?
it does.
Not, it's been another.
Wait a second. This is the second time with me.
Mm.
The dog, I was walking my two little dogs last summer, and she come around and had the dog. The dog took off, headed towards us, and she fell, and the dog is dragging her across the street. She's holding on. Her husband happened to be in the front yard, and I yelled at him, and he come running out and got the dog. After what happened last week, I have no doubt that dog would have killed my dogs that day if they would have gotten away from her. Our next door neighbor, because she has told me personally that her dog does not like golf carts. Our next door neighbor, Bill, when he found out what happened, he came over and told us that they were going by on a golf cart and she was in the front yard with the dog. And he said the dog went to charge out at the golf cart and she was holding on and it knocked her down in the yard. She was able to keep a hold of it. So, yes, if it gets the option, it will do it again.
It obviously sounds like it's been trying to.
Well,
Heaven forbid it attacks a kid.
yeah, it's obviously it's her responsibility to maintain control of the animal, which is in our ordinance.
Right.
That part is, and
Yeah.
so, I mean, we'll obviously look into it and see if we have any additional responsibility. But I think the biggest thing would be in those cases knowing about them, so that Luke could at least go issue a citation. So at least there's a record of that, and
Yeah.
hopefully that's a deterrent. There's a deterrent effect to that.
Just make sure the dog's in the house when you do that.
Oh, I heard it. Yeah, I did immediately.
Yeah.
I immediately handled it to the best I could. I did everything I could to stop it, which isn't much, but I did as soon as I heard.
But it's also state law, so
Right.
and
Right.
county law. And
Right.
Animal control is out, and you know, as witnessed with us when we met up with her, she did pay
That bill.
the bills that we had from that.
That's still not gonna.
And she agreed, I said, what are we going to do? My question is, what are we going to do to prevent this from happening to somebody else? And, they said they're going to walk their dog at different times and in different areas. And they're going to muzzle the dog anytime they have it out. I said, okay, well, how about some training?
For
It's not
somebody who
necessarily
can
training for the
control
dog,
it.
It's training for the dog and the owner, to train the dog and to train the owner how to handle the dog. So, in the presence of the animal control officer, said that that's what they were going to do, and that he was actually going to forward some information since the dog was a rescue. And as we understand it, the dog had there was something involving a child and the dog's food, and the child got bit. Don't know any other detail other than that. Was it on hand? Was it whatever? Was it a nip? Just I could stay away from my food. We don't know. But there was a history, and the dog was given up, and they rescued the dog, and then from there we've had this one thing after another apparently.
So it's been a
They
problem
barely
dog
able to
for a
handle it.
while, long while.
That was right after we walked past you.
I saw you all out walking.
Yeah, there's no way you could have heard anything.
Either mowing or driving or something.
It wasn't 2 minutes after we walked past you that this happened.
Yeah. So when I actually,
2 blocks heard it, so.
Yeah, it was very loud.
I obviously had no idea that was
Yeah,
going
no,
on,
you
but,
had that mower going, you had
Yeah.
a headset on too, there's
Yeah.
no way you could have heard it.
so
But it was just, you know,
I wish I
yeah,
could have
it was right after that.
seen, I don't know if it would have made any
Plus
difference.
you got hurt in it too.
Yeah, I ended up with a black eye,
Yeah, so
punching the dog and.
we open the doors at our kennels now with the dog catcher from the county. I've been cracking down on the dogs with no leash. I wrote a violation today. A lady walking her dog. It's not like I explained to her. It's not so much that I feel like her dog is dangerous to someone else's. It's for her dog too. You know. If
Yeah,
it
it
doesn't
works
have
both
leash-
ways.
yeah,
People need to be
protection
responsible
for-
for it.
That's how I explained it, and people get upset with me when I approach them. But
If a dog has his teeth, it can bite.
right,
That's
that's what
what-
they're
yeah.
for.
The double between, Broadway and Railroad on Clefman, that double right there.
Oh,
They've got a couple of dogs there, and last 2 times, today when I came home, and last Thursday when I came home from work, the dog out there with no leash on at all, big, you know, it looked like a big pit. It may be well controlled, I don't know, but it's just out there without a leash, you can tell it's running.
Right there.
Around them, amongst them, they were all out
The
there
pooper.
too.
Oh,
You know,
okay,
the families were out there too, the dog was with
Okay.
them.
okay,
But
yeah,
it was, to my appearance, it looked like he was running free,
yeah.
and I did not see any
Well,
restrictions.
some of it's deceiving because they have electrical fencing that's underground.
Yeah, and I,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
know.
from my, yeah, from
That's
what I can
all.
see.
But I tell you what, if a dog wants
Dog
to
poops on
attack,
your
it's
yard
gonna
all day.
jump through that
It'll go
and
through
get
that.
zapped and get them.
So
So
go through it.
Well, we'll definitely do what we can to stay on top of, at least
Yeah.
try to,
Dogs running
Be
loose
fairly
around
strict
here is
about-
not anything new.
right.
Wow.
I walk every night, I've
Because,
had my
yeah,
share of
because
runs
it
too.
is, you know, accelerated into what happened to us on the 31st.
Yeah,
Well, I will tell you now,
We are now more focused on.
we do have pepper spray.
Yeah.
Go for it.
That will be with us when
Absolutely.
we're walking our one remaining dog. And even if the dog is friendly and is running out just to even smell our dog, it will be sprayed.
Mhm.
yeah.
That was the most terrific thing to ever go through, to witness, so.
Yeah, we definitely don't want that to happen again.
Again, very sorry that happened, but,
oh my, it's like losing a kid.
yeah,
Yeah.
we'll continue to try to do what we can. Obviously, there's no perfect answer here, but we'll try. So,
Yeah.
anything else?
I'm still confused, I might have lost it someplace in the transaction. Do we actually get the library, or is that still a loss?
Still pending.
We're working on it. They've issued a response through an attorney, and, so we have to meet it regarding that and try to figure out what our next best option is, so. A motion to sign claims and adjourn our meeting?
I make a motion to sign the claims during the meeting.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Pam, do you have the claims or are they?
I don't have them.
Somebody must have, they were